So I managed to find a quiet spot in Central Park. I hope it's quiet. I hope it's not quiet because there's going to be some hobo jump out at me or something. But I've been walking around a bit. I've got my Fitbit on and I'm trying to burn 1,000 calories this morning, which might be a bit ambitious because it turns out that wherever you go in Central Park, if you're going to walk like more than 4 or 5 kilometers, you're going to end up looping back on yourself, because it turns out it's not that easy to walk very far, and there's so many people. I come from a small town in northern France, and there's never this many people around, and it's much more natural. So here in New York City, there's really not that much nature. There's Central Park, there's, I guess you could say, Riverside Park. There's a few more parks that I've heard of and haven't visited, but it seems like it's just mostly built up a lot of the places. So I even tried to go up northern states, so north of New York, and even there it's all residential. There's not really that much nature, disappointingly. But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience coming to New York. And as someone from Europe, it was quite difficult administratively, because you have to get a visa. So luckily with my job, I didn't have to do that much for the visa. I just applied, and within a week I'd got it back. But for administrative reasons, I could only do that about 2 weeks before I was supposed to actually be here. So that meant that you don't really have much foresight. You can't predict where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing, like when to book the flights. And so I had to book the flights literally, I think, the Friday for the Monday. It was super expensive, and I don't recommend it. If you can have more foresight for coming to America, like definitely do it. But that's how it turned out for me. And then the other thing is the culture. So it turns out as a French person, there's not that much of a culture shock despite coming from a small town. It's actually very easy to integrate here. The people are super friendly, and I wouldn't say it's that much of a shock at all. It's actually almost the opposite. It's quite like you feel at home very quickly, and on top of that, there's so many people in the city that you never feel judged or like people are looking at you. Like right now, I wanted to find a quiet space because I wanted to talk a bit, but I think I could have done it on a park bench and no one would have like batted an eyelid, or even just walking around, and same thing. The only issue is if you do want some quiet time, that's quite hard to find because there's people around all the time. So there's no real way to find anywhere where there's nobody. I'm lucky in the sense that at my work we do have a space that nobody uses very often, so I can go there if I want to. But essentially, you would never really find, just out in New York, I don't think, somewhere where you could be alone. There's always going to be someone within 200 meters of you, and that can be a bit difficult if you're used to countryside or small villages like I am. But at the same time, it adds a dynamism to your life which you don't get in small towns. So the other point I could talk about is meeting people. I found that it's quite difficult to meet people outside of your work or your hobbies if you have a hobby in a club. Everyone's so busy. It's very difficult to make time for people who you don't know if it's going to lead to a friendship or any kind of relationship, whatever you're looking for. So that can be challenging. In my experience, if you don't have already a network set up in New York, it's very difficult to start from scratch. But I would say overall, the experience is really unique compared to anything else you might do, because you're definitely going to meet people, even if it's just over the short term, who are very interesting, and you're going to do things that you can't necessarily do anywhere else. And of course there's always a coffee shop or burger restaurant or a diner open for any kind of tastes. So whatever you do, you're going to find something that fits your needs or your desires. There are a few downsides, I would say. Like, as I said, there's no nature, so you're never really alone. Networking can be a challenge, and obviously the rent is super expensive. I managed to find somewhere on the Upper West Side with 3 flatmates for $1,200. So that was honestly probably the best solution I could have had. But if you want to live in Manhattan, that's the kind of central part of New York where all the businesses are. It's probably, if you're working here, it's not going to be far from your work. You'd have to be looking at, I would say, $3,000 if you want to live alone, and quite possibly more. But I'm in no way an expert or a estate agent or anything like that, so I'm just talking from what I've seen online and what people have told me. But as long as you have a steady flow of income that's enough to suit your needs in terms of your rent and your basic necessities, food, etc., you're probably going to enjoy your time in New York.